What is going on, everyone? I hope you guys are all having a fantastic day, and I hope you guys enjoyed Major 2 as much as I did. There was tons of crazy upsets and a lot of unknown that we did not expect going into that tournament. So I'm going to be making an updated tier list because I've been getting a lot of questions based on the results from Major 2. Let's get right into the video. All right, here we go. So this is going to be updated Major 2. I know I did right before the Major 2, I did an updated tier list video going into it, and now I just want to do it going out of the Major. I think we've seen a good amount of Call of Duty. Now we've seen 2 online qualifying stages and we've seen 2 major events. So basically this tier list is going to be my personal opinion from overall across the board, the consistency some of these teams have shown. It's going to be hard to do it because we've seen some teams place really well and then we've seen them bomb out of certain majors. So I'm going to do my best to give you guys my professional opinion on where I think some of these teams rank heading in for the extended version of the season. First and foremost, I thought I had Optic at number 1, but I gotta say, after back-to-back majors now, FaZe Clan, yes, they have fallen short, but they have continued to impress and they find themselves in the grand final. I think that this goes to show how good this team really is. Yes, they have both fallen short and they've gotten second back-to-back majors, but on the flip side, these guys have shown the most consistency out of any team across the entirety of the CDL. The likes of Simp and Abizi, these guys continue to handle business. They continue to dominate and show their worth. Then on the side of the flex, you got Celium. The guy's an absolute beast. And RCDs continues to dominate as well. Overall, I think this team is the best team in the entire game right now. I don't think there's really a comparison to it. I think that the consistency factor just shows they've dominated through the online qualifiers, and both majors back to back, they've found themselves in the grand final. So I think it's impossible to argue that they're not the number 1 team or the number 1 in S tier. Followed up by FaZe Clan, we have Optic Gaming. I think even though Optic Gaming were to bomb out of the major and they lost to Seattle early on, they slowly but surely started to make a loser's bracket run, but overall they did fall short to the Florida Mutineers. I think it's safe to say that Optic is still in the S tier compared to a lot of these teams. They've continued to show why that they are at that top level, and I think it was just a fluke major realistically. They lost to 2 teams that I think majority of the time they would handle business first. I would say 8 out of the 10 times they would beat Florida and Seattle, but that 1 or 2 times out of 10 that they ended up losing to them in that tournament run. So I think, in my personal opinion, these are the only 2 teams still in S tier. I know LAG just won the tournament, and some of you guys may think, how are they not S tier? For me, it's not just a recency bias thing. It's that this team is so new. They did basically the unthinkable, and they blew everyone's mind through the weekend, so I just don't have them going into S tier. Again, I think these are the only 2 teams still into S tier, and only time will tell kind of where to place the rest of these guys. For the start of A tier, I think it's safe to say that the Boston Breach deserve to be there. Yes, people argue that they've had an easier schedule compared to some of these teams, but these guys have continued to handle business, placing in the top 6 in the first major and then top 3 in the second major. These guys have continued to dominate and they really show their worth. The likes of TJ and Methods have stepped up big time for the veteran role on the team, other than Capsule and Nero Poison continue to grow. And I think as time goes on, these guys will be able to beat some of the best teams. But for now, I think they're just right under that S tier. I think whenever they play the likes of FaZe and Optic and potentially even London, sometimes they tend to fall short a little bit, but they handle business versus most of the middle of the pack teams, and they will continue to dominate as the year goes on, hopefully. So I got them at the start of the A tier. Agree, disagree, it is what it is. This again is my personal opinion after the major so far, what we've seen consistency wise from a lot of these teams. Followed up behind them in A tier, this is where it gets really tricky, right? Like, we've seen a lot of different teams kind of show inconsistencies. I think I would put the London Royal Ravens up here. They've looked really good through the online stages. They had a good major 1, but major 2 they bomb out early, and they don't really show their worth. So I got them still sitting at the top of A tier. I think as time goes on, this team is really good top to bottom. They have some really good pieces. Afro and Gizmo and Afro, two guys making the name for themselves, and then Nasty and Trey Zero. These guys have continued to dominate. I think it's fair to put them in A based on their performance thus far in the league. This is again where it gets super interesting. I don't know exactly how to rate like Seattle Surge and LAG. I want to say I have LAG sitting at the top of A tier as well. Actually, no. I'm gonna put the Seattle Surge up here. I think there's a lot of unknown with the Seattle Surge team. I think we didn't get to see their full potential, and they possibly could have made a deeper run into this tournament if they were to take down LAG early on, but we will never know because Mac Melts was sick during Major 2. He ended up throwing up, not feeling very well, and didn't get to complete the Major out with his team. Classic, the Seattle substitute, came in, filled in. They went to a map 5 versus the team that won the entire tournament, and they just fell just short. So I got Seattle sitting at the end of the A tier. I think the rest of this, you guys are probably going to be pretty mind blown, but in my opinion, I think you have LAG sitting right at the middle of B. I think they're the first team in B, if not the last team on A tier. I don't know. You could argue to put them back and forth here. For me, LAG did the impossible, right? These guys go on to win the Major. They dominate, they turn heads, and they show really what these guys can do. But it goes on to me, and I just sit here and think, I'm like, what do these guys do next? Do they continue to have Spartan in their roster? Do they put Gunless back in? Do they go on another 10 S&D streak? Like what they did over this last weekend was something we've really never seen before. These guys go 10-0 or on a 10 win streak in S&D through the weekend. They go on to beat FaZe Clan in the finals, and they make one of the craziest losers bracket runs that we've ever seen. For me, it's like, I don't know what route these guys go. I think they're still sitting at the middle of B or the front of B, if not the back of A tier. You could maybe argue to swap them out for Seattle, but only time will tell how good this team really is. I know they just won the event, and it's a lot to kind of base off of recency, but I think I need to see what these guys can do as time goes on. I guess I'll put them here and take down Seattle. I think the more I sit here and talk about it, this is kind of the way I've rated them. I think they've had a really good series versus a lot of these teams, and they continue to show what they can do. So I'll put them at the back of the A tier, put Seattle at the front of B tier, since there's unknown with Mac Melts. But again, this is where it gets super tricky, super interesting, and if you guys have disagreements or whatever, then hey, leave it in the comments and let me know. But I have Seattle Surge at the start of the B tier. Then as follows, I got the Florida Mutineers. I think Florida continued to show what they can do. They arguably could have taken out the champs LAG, who won the entire tournament. They're up 5-3, game 5 versus this team. Florida seems to be getting a lot more consistency across their game. They're figuring out a good map pool to play out some of these teams on. We saw a lot of bow cage from them early on, and now teams are starting to veto that. Now they're playing the Gavutu. They look good through the Major. They need to sharpen up a few things, but the teams had a lot of improvement, and I think they turned a lot of heads this weekend and showed what they really can do when they're starting in the winner's bracket of a Major. So as time goes on, I'm curious to see if they can continue to improve or if they'll fall short and be one of the lesser teams in the league. For me, the middle of the B tier is going to be LA Thieves. And I think LA Thieves, they've looked good, but they haven't looked great, right? These guys go 0-5 through the online qualifiers. Going into the Major, they weren't a hot hand, but they make a little bit of a loser's run. They show their worth and show their capabilities playing a lot of these top teams. They take Optic all the way to a game 5, and I think it's only fair to put them in the middle of the B tier. I'm curious to see if these guys go on to make a roster change, if they make some role swaps or what they do. But overall, LA Thieves, they stepped it up, and they had some good bounce back wins for sure over the entirety of the weekend. The likes of Octane and Kenny have had some inconsistencies, including Draza as well. The only really star player for this team has been Envoy. So I hope they can go back to the drawing board, kind of figure things out, get more consistent in their search and destroy and control, then they can continue to dominate throughout the rest of the year. For me, I'll be honest, these bottom 4, bottom 6 teams, like it doesn't really matter where you place them. I think FaZe and Optic are literally S tier, and all these other teams kind of sit below them. It doesn't really matter what route you put these guys in. I think based off placements and how the majors have gone, it's only fair to put Paris in the bottom of the D tier. And this is where it gets super interesting. I think you'd have New York in the middle of C tier. We saw these guys kind of go at it a lot with some different teams this weekend. People were arguing that they hadn't played the best teams through the online stage, where they only beat Paris, Minnesota, and Toronto. But New York looked good. I think they're right on the end of C tier, if not in the middle of B. These guys have definitely looked a lot better since the improvements or improvement to the roster, adding Paul Lex for Clayster. They've looked a lot more sound, I guess, in hardpoint and more consistent in search and destroy. Curious to see if this team, when they face adversity, if they'll be able to bounce back and actually improve and continue to progress throughout the entirety of the year, or if they'll fall short and they'll kind of get back into that slump that New York was in. So they bombed out of the major kind of early. They ended up getting 12th place, so back-to-back 12th places for this New York team. But they got the work cut out for them, man. They got the new roster. I think a lot of teams would say that they definitely have some work to do. So I'm curious to see what happens over the next few months. For me, these two teams right here, they're hard to place anywhere. I think Minnesota and Toronto, both of them need to make a roster change. I think you could argue that both of these teams are potentially in D tier. I think Toronto Ultra is definitely in D, maybe right ahead of Paris. It won't let me move them, but Toronto Ultra, they haven't looked good, man. This isn't the same team that we've been seeing from Cold War. Their hardpoint woes have continued. They have one of the worst hardpoint records in the entire league. They really can't figure it out. They've kept the same roster. They've had lots of struggles with players getting sick, players not feeling super hot. They start in losers bracket of the major. They bomb out early on, and these guys haven't put it together once this year so far. So I'm curious to see what these guys do as well. I know a roster change is probably right around the corner. They have not found success thus far into the league. If they can figure out hardpoint, they could be a dangerous team, but so far in both majors, they haven't looked the best. Major 1, they go on to get top 4. Then Major 2, they bomb out early through the online stages. They haven't looked good, and I feel like it's only fair to put them down here. They need to figure this out before it gets too late. Major 1, when they did place top 4, they didn't win a single hardpoint at the major. Then going into the online qualifiers, their hardpoint woes again continue, and going into the major, the same thing happens. So these guys got their work cut out for them. Like I said, I'm curious to see what they can do. And then for this last one, I got Minnesota in D tier as well. I think you could argue, like I said, to put some of these teams in some of the different categories. But for me, the bottom 4 are as follows: New York, Ultra, Minnesota, and Paris. Minnesota has not looked good. These guys have tried to role swap. They've tried to change different things within their roster, but they just still continue to fall short. The major the online qualifiers didn't look good for this team early on in the major. They have a round 1 tough matchup versus Optic. They play them competitively, but they end up falling short to them. I think Minnesota, it's time to swap things up and get some new scenery. I think all the players are really good. I think you entertain a trade here potentially, but this is kind of where I got things. I think, again, Seattle and Optic, FaZe and Optic are the 2 best teams in the game, and everyone else is kind of in their own role. I think these teams all could individually beat each other here and there, and there's not a lot of consistency when any of these guys play the top teams other than maybe the likes of Seattle. I'm curious to see if LAG, like I said, keeps the same roster or what they will do moving forward. But this is how I got it so far. I think it's fair to say a lot of these teams haven't looked good. You could argue maybe to swap some teams, C and D, swap them out. But overall, they haven't looked good. So this is going to be my tier list moving forward through the major. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to please drop a thumbs up. Comment down below what other types of videos you guys would like to see. Again, this is all my personal opinion, and I think a lot of teams have a lot of improving to do moving forward, other than, you know, the likes of Optic and FaZe. So appreciate you guys watching. Drop a like, comment down below what you guys like to see, and until the next video, we will see you guys later. Peace.